a mix of culture or conversation or interaction between different people. It's very important now, especially now.
This is Unplugged, a series of conversations with creative minds from the design industry and beyond, hosted by H&H.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to another episode of H&H Unplugged. We have the great pleasure today to be here with Yoko Choi in connection with us from Amsterdam. Yoko is a creative personality, first of all, in her role of editor of a wallpaper global edition in China, part of the collective Contemporaries, and many other things. Good morning, Yoko. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much. Yoko, I would like to start our interview with a personal question. You were born in Hong Kong. Still, you have a strong connection with the Far East because of your position in Wallpaper magazine. But now you live in Amsterdam. What was the reason of your move to Amsterdam? Was it a personal one? Was it a professional one?
Yeah, I think the reason might not be as inspiring or as special as you might thought. I actually moved with my boyfriend. My boyfriend is German, and we met in Hong Kong. And at some point we thought it might be a good idea to move back to Europe and to try to have a life here and to experience the culture, etc. Luckily, very soon he got a very good opportunity in Amsterdam, and then we decided to move. Yeah, it's been already 7 years now, and I'm still spending my time here and half of my time in Hong Kong and China as well. So I'm always constantly moving. But of course, in the past couple of months, the reality changed a little bit. We both have to be here full time, and that's a new experience for me.
Being in Amsterdam, but still being very much involved with business in the other side of the world. I assume that the technology is helping you a lot, right?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, although I couldn't be in China or Hong Kong like physically, but I still like talk to my colleagues or talk to my collaborators every day. I mean, and if you know the working style in China or Hong Kong, we use a lot of messaging or WeChat and all that. And with that, you're connected with everyone anytime, anywhere you want. And I think because of the uncertainties and also the change of pace and work style and so on, I think people actually are more opened up or more willing to start new conversation, and everyone is trying to do something new and meaningful and inspiring. So there are more talks or more discussion over WeChat and everything. So I guess in a way, I feel still very close to them.
So this thing has maybe caught off guard more the old European world than the other Eastern world.
No, I think everyone is zooming, or I don't know, all these different platform and different way of communication, and is nice. I think is useful. It's very helpful for sure. But how I still don't know how it will replace or ever be able to replace the physical, like person to person interaction and so on. So still I'm like observating and trying out different things. Yeah.
Kind of experimental, we'll see. I mentioned in the introduction the collective Contemporaries. Can you tell us about that more in details? The values, the goals.
Yeah. So Collective Contemporaries is a creative consultancy. I start with my business partner, Morris Lee, around the end of 2018. And Morris is based in Beijing. So, I have to say I haven't seen him since January this year. But he's half American, half Chinese. And he grew up in Hong Kong. Part of his childhood was in Hong Kong. So we kind of speak the same language. I mean, we both have very international outlook and understanding of the local Chinese culture. And we actually met in 2016 when he was working on a very special project in Beijing. He was building one of the first local homegrown hospitality brand in Beijing. And at that time, he approached me to ask me to help him with international communications and to fill in content in his space. So that's how we met. And through the work done together for that project, we saw a lot of similarities and opportunities in China that we can together build something there. About the idea, the central core idea of collective contemporaries, there are three aspects three primary goals that we want to achieve. So firstly, we want to create a platform for creators or brands or international organizations or people in the creative industry or the cultural industry to enter China, to give them a way to reach or connect an audience in China. And as I said, it can be designers, architects. We have been working with a lot of brands as well to help them to organize events or to identify opportunities in China for them, to help them to translate the message not only in language but like the way of thinking or the message that they should spread in China. So that's one thing. And the second thing is to develop the platform to nurture local talents from China, to basically is to give them opportunities to present and to talk about their work and ideas and messages in a more global condition, which I think there are not a lot of opportunities for them yet. And I don't think, generally speaking, there are not a lot of international platforms or media outlets that are focusing or has a special interest in Chinese creativity or Chinese design yet. There are many reasons around it. We can talk about it later. But I think in general, the Chinese creative scene is just underrepresented or unseen in a way.
Absolutely.
So we want to create that opportunity for them. And then thirdly, we want to build a local community of people who are passionate and love design and looking for new lifestyle for their environment or for the culture in China. And for people that want to learn more about contemporary design, because it's still quite new topic in China in a general public level. So by doing this, we want to create more exchange and conversations between Chinese audience and international audience. And through all this exchange and conversation and material, we want to define what is Chinese contemporary design. And we want to try to define what Chinese contemporary lifestyle is and what we can contribute in a broader sense. And of course, also to help the industry to grow, business terms, of course, the market, and more importantly, to expand our global footprint in culture and design and everything. So these are the three main goals that we want to achieve through this creative agency. And so we officially launched Collective Contemporaries, this name, with initiative called Assembly in 2018 October in Beijing. So it was a creative conference that we start, and we find a very nice space for it. It was if you know about Beijing, there are a lot of a traditional courtyard, like a very traditional way of Chinese housing or drilling establishments. So we have the privilege to use one of the space redesigned by the Japanese architect Kengo Kuma. Is a
Wow.
converted, Japanese courtyard. Chinese courtyard, very beautifully done. And we also, for this event, we also work with DC, so to try to create already a global audience around make noise in the design industry. So it was a 3 days program, and we have invited Studio Drift from Amsterdam and based upon from London, and to join our local speakers, the local speakers including designers, architects, artists, people from real estate development or tech companies, so on, to have a very mixed and very dynamic mix of minds to discuss about challenges and opportunities the creative industry has at the moment in China, and also the possibility to generate more cross-cultural collaborations in China and also abroad. So that was like the initial conversation we had. And last year we collaborate with Design Shanghai. They are now one of the most influential design fairs in China now. And we curated a one-day talk program with them, which involved young creative entrepreneurs and business leaders around China to enrich the conversation. And we're very lucky, and we had very well response. And through all these events and talks and program we did, became even more obvious that this kind of exchange and this kind of opportunities is really needed, not only in China, but also for the global community too. So unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we had to cancel everything we planned already for the first half of the year. I think it's the same situation for you guys. And let's see what we can do in the second half of 2020.
It's interesting because, to summarize, if I got it right, the Collective Contemporaries is like a kind of cultural mediators between two worlds to let each other of the two understand the other one. You don't work only in one direction. I mean, to drag people to China, but also to let the other side of the world to understand what the real China is.
Exactly.
Which is beautiful. It's and introduce a subject of a question that I have for you later on, because it's very interesting. How did you decide to enter and what developed really? What was the engine that started your passion for design, lifestyle?
It's a journey, it's a development. So I won't say I born with the interest in design and art. It's definitely not like that. And I always like art of beautiful things and designs and so on. I studied journalism and graphic design in university. And I don't know why, but I always had this dream of working in magazines. So at the very beginning, I knew that I will be working as a journalist or writer or editor already. And after graduation, I got my first internship in Taipei to be editorial assistant of very good, but they don't exist anymore. It's an independent fashion lifestyle magazine. So that's how I entered the media world. And I think through that job and experience, it's give me the opportunity to start exploring design and lifestyle and fashion in a more cultural context. And I did that job. I stayed in Taipei for about 2 years. And then I returned to Hong Kong to start working for my favorite magazine, basically. It's called The City Magazine in Hong Kong. And I start writing. And the editor at that time, he gave me a lot of freedom. So he let me explore areas or things that I like. And of course, very, very naturally, I dive into design and interior and architecture. And also through that job, I got the opportunity to start traveling for my work to everywhere. So it was like, I still feel very lucky for that. And I remember the first work trip I took to Europe was a visit to Ben & Olufsen's headquarters in Denmark. And there's like eye-opener. I mean, Denmark is one of the most important design capital origins in the whole contemporary design history. And I think from then on, I think beautiful things are very addictive. I mean, the more you see, the more you know, the more you want to see. You never want to stop. And I think through my work, very luckily, very fortunate, I always have the chance to talk to beautiful minds, amazing creative, like people in the top of the industry. And I think I always also have I always like to learn what things work and how things is done, or how things are created. So I always have this idea of what make good design or what make a good culture. So this is always like the topic, or like where my curiosity is. So, and again, I mean, the more you know, the more you want to know. So I think that's how it keeps me moving, because
Motivated.
yeah, you never learn enough. You never know enough. So you want to learn more. And yeah, I think that's my passion.
And I think that after so much experiences that you have accumulated, more and more, you have maybe also the luxury of being selective, very selective in the collaborations that you established. And how do you choose? How do you choose them?
I always have been very fortunate that I always have the freedom to say, or can make a decision of like the subject or content or persons I want to research about or I want to study about. And I always pick my subject for my work, for my writing. And I think for collective contemporaries, I think I won't say I choose my collaborations, but I think the relationship comes naturally and grow in time as well. So a lot of people I've worked with are people I've known for a long time. I've been following their work from the very beginning of their career. And yeah, I think it's also important for me to truly understand their work and their thinking, their way of working, their philosophy, what they believe before I propose something to them. And I think it's also my responsibility to, as a journalist or as a communicator, that I have to truly stand behind the concept that I want to communicate or want to spread to my audience or my clients, so say. Yeah, I think I don't choose them, but I think the relationship or the idea comes in time. So, for example, you talk about Studio Drift. So I actually knew Nonika and Ralph in Dubai. It was we actually met in Dubai, and it was and I think that was 2012. It was the first edition of Design Days Dubai, and they were invited to the fair to be a featured designer. They create a beautiful shine lights piece and show and launched in Dubai. And I was there as a journalist. So we started talking and then that's how we met. And then of course we both live in Amsterdam. Then we have a lot of chance to hang out, to exchange. And what I think is very fascinating, and I'm very happy to see how they grow as a practice and as artists. And I think what's so fascinating for me about their work is they're always testing and examining and experimenting the relationship between human beings, the nature, and technology. And I think very often we think that technology is driving us away from nature and human connection. But through their work, you actually understand that it's the opposite. I mean, technology is helping us to get back to the nature, to develop even closer connection with people. So I think that's a very interesting and very innovative, and it can be a very strong message for the world as well. And I think everything they do, like sculptures or installation or performance, they're always so poetic and so precise. And I think that's quite unique in the industry. So yes, as I said, Lonika came to Beijing with us for the assembly launch in Beijing. And then another example is New Tendency. I don't know if you know of them from Berlin. It's a creative studio. Yeah, it's a creative studio and also a furniture brand. So Manuel Gola, the creative director of the studio, he came to Shanghai last year to join our program with Design Shanghai. And his work is very well received in China. And last year was the 100th anniversary of Bauhaus movement. And it's a very well received and very appreciate a movement or style in China too. I also follow their work since the very beginning of their career, and I think what's fascinating or what I like about their work is that they're very traditional in a way because they base the philosophy and thinking on the Bauhaus school, the Bauhaus study. And but they're using very contemporary language and methods to create pieces that we can use in daily life now. And they're always very precise, very clean lines and function based. Everything is just so perfect and so German in a way. And that's what I like about it. So now we're planning more events and activities in China together, to try to help them to launch the brand in China as well, to find the right audience. And I think also as a young practice, I think their experience and the knowledge or their insight in the global design industry will be very beneficial to the local designers in China as well. That's what we're trying to do to share experience and to create opportunities of collaborations as well.
Interesting that it's very much also related to the human and personal connections, the human beings, which is involved in the business. Interesting. You have anticipated a thing that I wanted to ask you about the Bauhaus, or you mentioned the Bauhaus. One of the pillars of the Bauhaus, and maybe the most famous point, was that the design, so that the shape, the form, is a direct connection of the function of an object, of a product. The world has changed in the meantime, in 100 years, and now we cannot deny that a product is also made up based on a trend. And I don't mean it in a negative way. A trend is also a cultural layer which is added to the product, and it is about what the product speaks about, values, materials, not just about being a nice object, but even the cultural contents of an object. Do you see anywhere in the world the rise of a new trend now?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, because for me, I think I'm always quite critical when it comes to something designed with purely only about fashion or trend. And I think good design should always be functional. Good design always try to solve problems around us in our life. And of course, there are a huge spectrum between design and art, and more expressive design that's more inclined to the art direction. But I think that's, as you know, art and design, the boundaries is become less and less obvious now. So I don't against that designers are more expressive and so on. But for me, when I look at design, I try to understand the context of the idea. I want to understand why and how they reach to the conclusion of that shape or of a function or objects. So I guess, especially at this point of time, I think, especially if you think we're actually facing a very urgent environment challenge, and we have a lot of environmental issues that we should look at the moment. You name it, a design which has context or have a function of solving problem is even more important than ever. Also because it's a universal threat. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in Europe, if you're in the Middle East or in Asia, you're facing the same crisis and problem. And I think the the pandemic is a very good wake-up call, because I think in the past couple of months, people in the industry, designers or brands or companies, they start realizing how ridiculous we have been in terms of overproducing and over-consuming, and not really concerning or putting effort in changing the future for the better. And I think a lot of designers, no matter they are based here or they're based in Asia, everyone is trying to rethink their practice and how to stay relevant to the world through their work, and what they can contribute to a better future. And I think if we would talk about trend or concept or idea now, I think this should be the central topic or central concern from now on for every designer or every creator in the industry.
It is very much shared, that opinion, among even entrepreneurs, even art directors, architects, people that we spoke in the past couple of months during the interview, that this is a crucial subject, absolutely, to be now at the very center, not just on a side of the conversation. It must be. Speaking about, again, design, I'm curious to know your opinion about it being a bridge between two cultures, between two worlds. In the Western world, and speaking about especially product design, there is a perception that maybe is a misperception of China being, despite the millenary culture, very refined of arts and craft, being in the last 20, 30 years, 40 years, just a followers, no longer a creative laboratory, but just the followers, like a gigantic factory that produces copies of what someone else somewhere else has thoughts. Listening to you now, I feel there is a misperception, because there is a lot of creativity and originality going on there as well, right?
Yeah, so I think that there are still many assumptions and biases towards the industry, the creative industry and production industry in China. And I think this is a result partially coming from generalizing the situation, and people don't actually know, so they don't get the update or the current situation of development coming from China. So I think it's also a lack of transparency and lack of knowledge around the world that give this kind of assumption still. But I think so. Let's say. So going back a little bit to the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak in Europe, I think beginning of March or mid of March, if you remember, there was the starting of the conversation that of this discussion that if we should proceed with Design Week, if we should keep Salone di Mobili, or we should cancel it. And I think that's a very interesting moment as well, because I think one of the very main concern of the whole cancellation of how the industry will proceed in the coming month was that because of the complete lockdown in China, a lot of factories doing furniture prototyping, production, and the main material suppliers from China are all shut down. So no one is working. So basically the whole supply chain was stopped and it's broken. So the conversation was also that not only because of the situation of the pandemic, but also the industry couldn't really process, because according to a report from McKinsey in 2019, Chinese factory accounts for 26% of the world production in the furniture businesses. Yeah. So even though if you don't agree with the way they're creating, or you see still a lot of problem in copying or that, I mean, China still play a very decisive role in the whole industry. And I think this has to be seen in a positive.
Taken in consideration, for sure.
Yeah. And as I said, there are lots of channels or platform for us to talk about Chinese design yet. And and actually this year I was helping some of the designers. They had planned to show in Salone di Mobile. So there are actually 7 very bright and young designers and brands from China planned to showcase in Milan this year. And maybe I can take the opportunity to introduce them as well. So there are a couple of them. They plan to launch their work and the studio in Salone Satellite. And this include Bamboo Studio, Sean Liu, and Q Studio, and also industrial designer from Hangzhou, Mario Choi. He's planning his second solo exhibition in Tortona after the after the very well-received debut he had last year. And also then we have the research-based Pimbu Studio that plans to showcase or to show the research latest study about Chinese craftsmanship, how they can survive in this contemporary context and what they can make out of it, and to contribute to the international industry. And then we also have Chen Min, also from Hangzhou. He's furniture designer and the finalist of the Loewe Foundation Craft Prize in 2018. And then finally, we have a Beijing-based furniture brand called Fenji. They do very high quality handmade wooden furniture in China, but for now they're only catering the local market. But they have the plan to showcase in Milan this year as a celebration of their 10th anniversary, and to launch the idea and concept internationally too. And of course, unfortunately, there's no Milan Design Week anymore. And I think as everyone else in the industry, they're trying to find a new way to communicate their work and try to find new way to connect with a global audience. And I think, of course, it's the same. The situation is the same for this group of young designers in China. And I think, give them. Well, the positive thing is that now they have a bit more time to prepare for next year. So let's hope that we can all see their work next year.
Yeah,
together.
We hope so. Look, Yoko, when you move back and forth from Amsterdam and Hong Kong and China, what is in your, let's say, cultural luggage that you move from one side to the other of the world? Or in other words, what is still for you strange that you see as Asian in Europe and strange now that you live in Europe as a European in Asia?
Yeah, in a literal sense, if you ask me, well, every time I come back from Asia to Europe, I bring a full luggage of everything, like food from China. I have cosmetics from South Korea. I have magazines from Japan. Like I literally bring a lot of things with me back to Europe. And surprisingly, if you think that, well, I mean, now you can get everything everywhere around the world. I'm sure in Dubai you can get really nice Italian food and all that,
sure.
that you need. But still, there's something you want to have it with you physically when you go back from your hometown. So that's in a literal sense what's in my suitcase. I always try to be open and completely transparent about my experience I have in Europe, or my experience and my knowledge from China, to try to share and to discuss openly with any side of the world, to try to encourage more conversation and collaborations.
You've spoken about innovation, a lot about the innovation, and about tradition to the courtyards in Beijing. What's the relationship in design between innovation and tradition in China now among the new generations, among the upcoming generation of designers. The tradition is forgotten, and they are pointing just to the future. They are trying to make an effort to mix the two things.
I think tradition will never go away. Tradition is how you grow up, traditions and cultures are the tools you have to relate yourself to the world and to other peoples as well. But I think in a Chinese context, I don't think innovation is in contradiction to traditions in any sense. So I can give you some very good examples in the past couple of months to show you how innovations and technology is part of people's life, and how they help the people in China to get over this very difficult time. Like 2 weeks into the coronavirus outbreak, there is like a new health code system. I don't know if you have heard about it. So launched firstly in Hangzhou. Hangzhou is the national center of the internet industry in China. So it's a health code system the government developed with the help of Ant Financial, sister company of the e-commerce giant Alibaba. So they developed this health code so citizens are obliged to register with their digital wallet to get this code. And then that code will tell you if you're in the risk of coronavirus contagious area, or if you are required to be quarantined, or if you're safe to travel from A to B. So it's a very clear and very efficient system to give people real-time warning and information about the pandemic situation. And I think with that, we can all see the results. The virus is contained in China very well. Yep. Until now. And also there's another Hangzhou-based e-commerce giant called NetEast. They work with the local authority to develop the internet system to secure mask for all the citizens in Hangzhou and later in the country. So, because as I said, Hangzhou is the national capital.
Technological,
Yeah. So this kind of social program can be very easily executed and implemented throughout the whole country. And of course, there are people, of course, concerned about privacy or social security, all sorts of things. But I think that we have to discuss very separately. And another example is DJI, is the drone company based in Guangzhou. And throughout the pandemic time, they used the drone and they used the system to enforce the social security measures throughout different cities, for example, to broadcast information, to spread disinfectants, to clean up the street, and to test people's body temperature. So, and you can see them. And also, as we talk about at the very beginning of our chat, that people are actually using a lot of WeChat and all these online shopping delivery services to help them to get through this difficult time. And I mean, if you look at the numbers, or if you look at the trends, there's TikTok is striving in the past couple of months because people need to be entertained when they're at home, when they're staying at home. So you can see technology and innovation and all this digital means it already a very core part of people's daily life in China. And I think this trend or this development will not stop. I think this will only be more and more important in their life. But going back to your question, I don't think it has anything to do or contradict with the traditions.
The contrary of tradition, the two things that can live together without any problem. Absolutely. We are talking a lot about now, and you are an example of cultures, mixing cultures. Do you think that the mix of different cultures and point of views, and there could be a barrier to the creation and to the security of a national identity in a country, or they are just a positive addition to the sparkling reality?
Yeah, I think I can start with my own experience. I think being away from home actually gave me the opportunity and the space for me to look at my own culture more clearly and with a more objective eyes. And I think the more different cultures and different experiences I expose myself to, I mean, the greater understanding I have developed, even for my own culture. And I think it's also give me the space that I need to see or to look at our own flaws. So because there's no perfect culture in the world, and I think with all this experience and insight, and I gathered in my time in Europe or anywhere in the world, I think it helped me to improve my own culture and help me to do my work better as well. So I think that's very important. Especially if you're in the media, if you're in creative businesses, you need this kind of mixed culture, this kind of inspiration in your work and in your life too. And I think then I think it comes to the point that why cultural diversity is so important now. And I think as we discussed just now, culture is a way of being. So it's about our collective experience, it's about our language, it's about our values, it's about a lot of other things, norms, behaviors, and material subject too. So, and this also help us, I think, learning about other cultures or different cultures help us to understand the different perspective in the world around us, and to help us to clear all the negative feelings or negative stereotype we have towards each other, which is, I find it really unnecessary in a lot of sense, and a lot of conflicts or arguments or unpleasant events are actually happening because we don't understand each other. And I think that's why a mix of culture or conversation or interaction between different people or different group of cultures are very important now, especially now. And I think, well, of course you will know, because like the beautiful thing about learning other cultures is that you always get this kind of excitement and inspirations. And I think you also feel fitted in the world if, for example, you accept my culture, you appreciate my culture, you recognize my presence in the world. And I think this is something very special and very beautiful that we can build together. And I think from all this mix of culture, there will be more meaningful collaborations and good things happen from it. And I think if we talk about national identity, I think we're actually talking about what we can contribute to the world and how influential we can be. And I think if we can pick up all the good things or the best values or best practice or way of living from different cultures, and to enrich and advance our own culture, and then everyone can contribute more, can offer more, can be more influential in the world. So I think when we talk about national identity, I think that's the value of it.
Yeah, and I agree, and it is a very positive message to spread, I think, especially during this time, which is quite frightening, and the people maybe they tend to close themselves and be afraid of others for many reasons, from a personal point of view, like of health and the cultural one. But I think that even the concept of culture and national identity, they are in continuous transformation. So the contribution of each and every one always is a nice addition to the next national identity, to the next culture that will define China, Holland, Italy as we will know it in 20, 25 years.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And as we discussed, I don't think any kind of traditions or cultures or practices will be gone. And I think things will remain. Your what's special about one culture, what's special about Chinese, or what's special about Italian or Middle East culture, I think it will remain. It will just be a richer and richer world in the future.
Everyone. We were talking about generalizing before, the generalization of the perceptions. The perception that I have, if I should step back and look at the Western world and the Eastern world and talking about human beings, it looks to me that the Western world spins around the empowerment of the individual, which is at the center of each and every action. On the other hand, the Eastern world is more about a collective interest, so less centered on an individual human being, but more on the collective interest. Do you agree with that vision, and how does it influence, in case, the design again and the culture of the people?
Well, I don't think this is a key concern or entry point when we look at design or when we talk about good design. As I said, it might influence the approach or the expression of how the designers are going to realize their concepts and ideas. But I think, as I said, good design should always be about solving problems. And of course, the problems designers are facing would be very different for a designer living in China or for a designer living in Italy, because their immediate surroundings or people surrounding them are different. So basically, they have to solve different problems. And I think for that, and also in different situations, you have different regulations or restrictions towards your design or practice or production. So of course, all these influences will result in the final product or final design from a certain group of designers. But I don't think it comes from individualism or collectivism. I think it's about your surrounding and your immediate challenges around the designers. And of course, for art,
direct experiences.
Yeah, and of course, for art, it's very different, because art is always about expressing yourself, expressing your own ideas and your concerns. And I mean, some of the artists might have the same concern as designers in community, in society, or in the economy, or politically as well. But I think the function and the way of art are always very different from design. So I think, it's a different situation.
Looking at one or the other, the answers might be even slightly different. You're right. Yeah. Look, we have almost reached the conclusion, sadly, of our conversation, and I have two personal questions for you. The first one is an inspiring book that you lately had the chance to read.
It's a good question, because I think everyone gets quite tired reading all the news about pandemic or the politics.
Exactly.
And so, I have just recently started two books. One is by the New Yorker journalist Malcolm Gladwell. He's the author of Outliners and the Tipping Point. And this new book he published, I think, end of last year, is called Talking to Strangers. What should you know about people that you don't know? And I think it's a composition of stories of how to tell us how we misread people that we don't know, how we make careless assumptions or conclusions to things that are not familiar to us. And I think that's quite interesting for me as to understand what he thinks or what he find out. And the other one is, I have it with me here. It's called The Debate. Yeah, it's also a very beautifully graphically designed book, and it's a transcript and story around a legendary public debate happened in Amsterdam in 1972 by two of the most important graphic designers in the Netherlands. One is Wim Crouwel, and the other one is Jan van Ton. And it's about the debate or the argument around their work and their concept, ideas, politics, and method in creating things. So I think we can all get some new insights from it for the current world we're staying in.
Very interesting, and thank you very much. We will add them to the Unplugged booked list, the suggestions for the summer. Okay. The very last question is, since we are trying with H&H Unplugged to expand our boundaries towards the creation of a kind of lifestyle, we have created also recently, we started with a playlist on Spotify, which is called Musica d'Arredo. And we are asking the contribution of friends with song titles. I'm doing the same with you. 5 songs from the west and 5 songs from the east.
Cool. So I have quite weird music taste. So I try. Yeah, I mean, when I work, when I'm writing, and when I am doing research and so on, I don't like to be disturbed. So I like to listen to something very minimal and very clean. And recently, well, not recently, but in this couple of years, I discovered a German music label called the Restalotten. I don't know if you have heard of them. I can send you the name. And it's a label of very minimal and experimental electronic music. So I think it's helped me to concentrate and clear my mind. And they work with very good sound artists and visual artists like Ryoji Ikada and also Carsten Nicolai. So I actually learn about their artwork first before coming to their music. So the whole, and I'm a very visual person, so I always like to have a visual when I listen to something. And this is one of the recommendations. And if you're familiar with the work of the Japanese writer Haruki Murakami, and then you know that he's one of the most important writer in the contemporary Japanese writing. And in his work, jazz and classical music are very important components in all his writing. And I recently found it on Spotify. There's like I have to read the number. There's like a 238-hour-long playlist of all the music or all the songs he has been written or described.
Mentioned in his writings and books. Wow.
So there are 3,442 songs in total. Okay. So it's more than 5. And then, there's a very long playlist. And then, very interesting also because I have a very young sister. She is just 20 now, and she is completely into all kind of Korean pop music. So she introduced all the boy bands and girl bands to me. And recently told me the current big hit is like a new song from Blackpink. I don't know if you have heard about them. It's like, I just find this kind of South Korean pop culture. And I mean, as a cultural phenomenon, I think it's totally fascinating. And different too.
Yeah,
if you're
for sure. Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. We will take duly note of that and we will add to the compilation. Not for sure all the 3,500 songs, but okay. So thank you very much, Yoko. It's been a great pleasure, and I hope we didn't take too much of your time. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you in Dubai for maybe, because it might happen, the Design Week in November.
Okay. Oh,
yeah,
great.
that it looks like that is confirmed. So
Amazing.
I look forward to see you here.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I think I really appreciate that what you guys are doing, trying to develop this kind of platform for cultural and creative exchange.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Yoko. Thank you.
Thank you.